Honestly, I turned it pretty good. I think I just got caught. I don't think I stepped on anybody. I'm not sure from the replay, but hard, especially when, I felt like I kind of started the game off good and then you get hurt.
And I understand that Caitlin be talking crazy. She is no saying. She be on there talking and
but that's
saying.
That's
basketball.
Caitlin Clark didn't hold back when she fired back at ESPN for pinning the Fever's loss on her, completely ignoring Dee Carrington's blatant cheap shot during the game. It's as if they conveniently overlooked that key moment. Honestly, it's starting to feel like every technical foul, wave of hate, and even accusations of racism are unfairly directed at Clark. Being the stay-at rookie that she is, some people just can't handle her success.
I had to pick a rookie of the year at this time.
Today you had to pick,
it's Angel.
My rookie of the year is going to go based on the standing.
Okay.
Because I think that is how you have the opportunity to measure impact.
And the sky's right above them.
And the Sky right now are in the playoffs, so you'd have to give the nod in my mind to Angel.
Half of the veterans are likely sitting back, wondering why they didn't get the same level of recognition during their prime, while the rest of her competition is probably hoping for her suspension just to have a shot at stepping out from her shadow. Meanwhile, ESPN, hungry for ratings, is stirring up drama, knowing controversy pulls in viewers. But they all seem to overlook one key fact. Clark may keep her head down, but her skittles on the court and sharp comebacks speak louder than all the noise they can generate.
It was just she was receiving all the accolades, the praise for everything that was happening in the WNBA, and she hadn't even played a game yet.
Wait a minute.
Martin looking. Here's Clark. She fires and goes!
If you've been living under a rock or blissfully unaware of the latest WNBA drama, let me catch you up. ESPN wasted absolutely no time jumping all over Caitlin Clark after the Indiana Fever's Game 1 loss to the Connecticut Sun. The second that final buzzer sounded, it was like sharks in a feeding frenzy, with ESPN leading the charge. Their focus, Clark's stat line. They were quick to highlight her 11 points, all while throwing shade at her 4 of 17 shooting, especially that rough 2 of 13 from 3. It was as if they had been sitting in wait, eager to pounce the moment she'd had a less than stellar performance. And boom, suddenly Caitlin Clark had apparently collapsed on the biggest stage of her career. At least that's how ESPN was spinning it. You'd think from the media narrative that Clark was the sole reason for Indiana's loss, as if the other 12 players on her team were just there for decoration, and whether they won or lost was somehow all on Caitlin Clark's shoulders. It's baffling. ESPN seemed to forget that basketball is, last time I checked, a team sport. And yes, Clark didn't have a typical Caitlin Clark game, but to pin the entire loss on her is not only unfair, it's absurd. Clark has faced her share of critics throughout her career, but this felt different. It felt personal. All ESPN seemed to care about was one playoff game where, sure, she didn't drop 30 points, but it wasn't like her stat line was a disaster. She contributed in other ways, too. 8 assists, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, and a block. Plus, all of this happened while she was playing with a messed up eye. But did ESPN care to highlight that detail? Nope. Nothing. Crickets. This kind of reporting isn't just careless, it's misleading. Sure, Clark didn't have the explosive scoring night fans might have hoped for, but there's a lot more context here than ESPN bothered to mention. For starters, Caitlin was doing all of this with a literal black eye. Let's rewind to the beginning of Game 1. 90 seconds into the game, Connecticut's Dee Carrington went for the classic poke-in-the-eye move. Whether intentional or not, it was hard to tell, but it was a solid hit. Clark hit the floor, clutching her face in obvious pain. You'd think the refs would at least take a second look at it, right? Nope. No call, no foul, no nothing. And ESPN, barely a whisper about it, yet they wasted no time pointing out her missed shots and poor shooting percentage. Now, Caitlin Clark being Caitlin Clark, she wasn't about to throw a pity party. She got up, shook it off, and kept playing, even though her eye was clearly bothering her. The girl was out there with one eye practically swollen shut, but you wouldn't know it from watching ESPN's coverage. They were too busy crafting a narrative that Caitlin Clark, the star of the season, had crumbled under playoff pressure. And yeah, her shooting was off, but let's not act like she was just out there throwing bricks for fun. It's kind of hard to nail three-pointers when you've been poked in the eye and your vision is blurry. To make matters worse, some folks started circulating photos of Carrington's nails, trying to act like she was the Wolverine out there on the court. Now, let's be real, Carrington's nails weren't crazy long, but they weren't exactly trimmed down either. Personally, I clip my nails before I go to the gym because long nails and basketball just don't mix. But no matter what you think about the nail situation, it's pretty clear that Carrington's eye poke did some damage. Of course, when asked about it after the game, Clark, as usual, downplayed the whole thing. She got me pretty good in the eye, Clark admitted, but she quickly followed that up by saying, but it didn't really affect me. I got good shots, they just didn't go down. Classic Caitlyn, always refusing to make excuses, even when she has every reason to. But let's be honest, anyone taking the finger to the eye like that would be thrown off. Shooting with blurry vision, it's no wonder her shots weren't falling. And look, if you're going to criticize a player's performance, at least tell the full story. Don't just cherry-pick stats that fit a narrative. Clark's game wasn't just about her shooting. She played solid defense, dishing out assists and making smart plays, all while playing through pain. But ESPN wasn't interested in that. They were too busy pushing the storyline that Clark had failed on the big stage. It's as if they forgot about the historic season she had. Caitlin Clark was breaking records all year long, single-handedly elevating Indiana's play and becoming one of the biggest names in women's basketball. But the minute she had one off night in the playoffs, they were ready to write her off. Let's not pretend like every other superstar athlete hasn't had bad games and big moments. That's part of sports, but it's how you bounce back that defines you. Clark didn't lose that game alone. It's a team sport after all. And while she had an off night, Indiana as a team didn't play their best either. There's more to the game than just one player, and ESPN should have remembered that before they jumped on the let's tear down Caitlin Clark bandwagon. So yeah, Caitlin Clark didn't drop 30 and gain 1, but anyone who's followed her career knows better than to count her out. She's a competitor, and this won't be the last we hear from her. And next time, maybe ESPN should consider telling the whole story instead of just the part that fits their narrative. ESPN has been blowing things out of proportion with Caitlin Clark all season long, constantly nitpicking every little moment where she shows emotion or frustration. It's as if they're waiting for her to slip up so they can craft a narrative about her being too emotional or undisciplined. A perfect example of this is how they've handled her technical fouls. Caitlin's gotten texts for things as minor as celebrating after a big play or slamming her hands on the basket support out of frustration. We're not talking full-blown tantrums here, just the typical reactions you see from any competitive player. But ESPN loves turning these moments into headlines. Look how many WNBA players have vented their frustration after a no call or celebrated with some extra energy after a big shot. It happens all the time, yet when Clark does it, it's like the end of the world. Take the time she got a technical against the Dallas Wings for slamming her hands on the basket support. ESPN couldn't wait to jump on the opportunity to label her as too hot-headed, conveniently ignoring the fact that plenty of other players do the same thing without the media blowing it out of proportion. ESPN's bias is crystal clear. They're quick to sensationalize Clark's passion as a flaw, give others a pass for similar behaviors. Angel Reese is a prime example. Reese has had her own emotional outbursts, but ESPN doesn't frame them in the same negative light. The double standard is glaring. Clark's passion and fire for the game are treated like liabilities, while other players are allowed to show emotion without it turning into headline news. The truth is Clark's competitiveness is what drives her. She's carrying the Indiana fever on her back, leading in scoring, assists, and just about every other stat. But instead of recognizing her incredible impact, ESPN fixates on those rare moments of frustration as if they define her career. It's especially frustrating because ESPN has been slow to give Caitlin Clark the credit she deserves for boosting the WNBA's profile. Her impact on the league has been monumental. Since she entered the scene, viewership has spiked, Indiana Fever merchandise sales have gone through the roof, and more eyes are on the WNBA than ever before. Clark has brought more attention to the league than probably any other player in recent memory, yet ESPN acts like it's no big deal. When was the last time you saw ESPN acknowledge the massive revenue boost the WNBA has enjoyed thanks to her? Exactly, crickets. Clark isn't just a regular rookie, she's a game changer. Her name alone is drawing in new fans and increasing visibility for the league. The WNBA is reaping the benefits of having a star like Clark, and it's about time ESPN recognized that instead of focusing on her emotional outbursts. Sure, she shows frustration from time to time. What competitive athlete doesn't? But instead of portraying her as someone who's constantly on the verge of losing control, maybe they should highlight her passion, her leadership, and her undeniable talent. It's time for ESPN to drop the double standard and give Caitlin Clark the respect she's earned. She's not just the future of the WNBA, she's shaping its present too. The league is seeing a surge in popularity because of players like her, and that's the real story here. Clark's passion and fire are what make her great, and it's high time the media starts acknowledging that instead of turning every little moment into a controversy. Caitlin Clark has completely shifted the narrative for the Indiana Fever, a team that was essentially an afterthought until she arrived. Now the Fever are not only relevant again, but they're seeing a massive surge in merchandise sales. Fans are scrambling to grab anything with her name on it, and Clark's jerseys are flying off the shelves like it's Black Friday. Yet despite her undeniable impact, people are still acting like Angel Reese is the one bringing in the big bucks. Sure, Reese has her fan base, no doubt about that, but when it comes to pure market power, Clark is playing in a whole different league. And let's not forget the blatant foul during a game between the Fever and the Connecticut Sun when Dejanay Carrington caught Clark in the eye. Clark ended up with a black eye, and yet somehow, it wasn't even called a foul. Despite this, Clark powered through, showing the kind of resilience that has come to define her game. It's not just about what happens on the court, though. Clark's presence in the WNBA has sparked a noticeable uptick in viewership, and the numbers don't lie. Games featuring Clark are pulling in higher ratings with people tuning in just to see what she's going to do next. But of course, ESPN barely gives her any attention. Instead, they're busy hyping up other players like Angel Reese, almost pretending that Clark isn't the one driving this newfound interest in the league. It's almost laughable. The selective reporting and obvious bias are glaring signs that ESPN has its own agenda. They're actively downplaying Clark's role in what's been a massive financial boost for the WNBA while trying to convince everyone that Reese is the real star. But where's the proof to back that up? There isn't any, because when you look at the data, it's clear that Clark is the one making the difference. Clark's name, her skill, her presence on the court, that's what's sparking this wave of renewed interest in the WNBA. The Fever, who could barely sell anything before she arrived, are suddenly raking in merchandise sales. Clark's jerseys have been top sellers all season long, and the Fever's financial boost is impossible to ignore. Yet ESPN is nowhere to be found when it comes to reporting on that. They seem more interested in pushing other narratives, ones that don't involve the undeniable fact that Caitlin Clark is the one bringing in the viewers, the revenue, and the attention. Beyond the merchandise and the ratings, let's talk about Clark's resilience. That's another thing ESPN seems to gloss over, despite the fact that throughout her rookie season, she's been under the media's microscope. Clark has faced more criticism than most players, with her every move being nitpicked by the media. And yet, even with ESPN constantly scrutinizing her, Clark stays focused. A perfect example is Game 1 against the Connecticut Sun. Despite the hype around other players, Clark remained undeterred and led the Fever both on and off the court, showing once again why she's the face of this franchise. Clark's resilience isn't just physical, like shutting off that black eye from Carrington's foul. It's mental too. She's been carrying the Fever all season long, not just with her stats, but with her leadership. Whether it's the media overhyping her technical fouls or simply ignoring her role in boosting WNBA revenue, Clark refuses to let the noise get to her. She just keeps doing what she does best, playing her heart out and proving her critics wrong. The bottom line is this: Caitlin Clark is the driving force behind the Fever's resurgence and the WNBA's financial uptick. Her impact extends far beyond her rookie status. She's drawing fans, boosting viewership, and selling out merchandise in ways that other players simply aren't. Yet ESPN continues to downplay her contributions, pushing narratives that don't reflect the reality of what's happening in the league. At the end of the day, Clark's game speaks for itself. No matter how hard the media tries to shift the spotlight elsewhere, Clark's undeniable talent and market power keeps shining through. She's changing the game in real time, on and off the court, and she's doing it all while staying focused and resilient in the face of constant media scrutiny. The Fever and the WNBA are both reaping the benefits of having Caitlin Clark in the league, and it's time that everyone, including ESPN, starts giving her the credit she deserves.